Reddit, what's your creepiest weirdest coincidental experience? Mine is also graveyard related. Weird, right? Me, a friend and my future wife were hanging around in the graveyard near my house smoking weed and whatnot when I was 15/16. Me and the friend had stopped to look at the grave of our mutual friend's stepdad who had died unexpectedly a couple of years ago. We knew him and were probably a little weed somber. My future wife had wandered well down the row away from us and we stood chatting about the last time we'd seen the dead guy etc. My future wife comes back towards us to get me to come with her, looks at me and says, "Come on Patrick, I want to show you something." Patrick was the name of the dead guy's only son. She had no reason to call me it and did not know what we were looking at or why. She also did not know him or his son. Needless to say, we freaked out a little. TLDR, future wife possibly channels dead person. My grandpa has always been the type of guy to love science fiction and the paranormal. One time he told me a story that has always freaked me out. Years ago when my mother and her sisters were little, my grandpa had a Ouija board that he liked to mess around with down in their basement. One day, he asked the Ouija board questions about himself that the board could answer. That is, where am I from, what's my address, who is my mother, just to see what it would say. He asked how many daughters do I have and it responded with 3. My grandpa said, "I have 4. And the board responded with, "Not for long." 2 weeks later one of his daughters died in a car crash. Ugh, not going to sleep tonight. My aunt, dad's sister, died young of cancer on the 3rd of October, 2007, when I was a junior in high school. In my senior year, I took advanced art and we were working on clay sculptures one day. At the tables of 4, one person was instructed to go and grab a stack of old newspapers from a cabinet that contained hundreds of old newspapers the teacher supplied for protecting the tables during projects. Another guy goes to grab the paper and tosses me some for my area of the table. I begin work on my sculpture and realize my materials are on the obituary section. I read over them for a second and see my aunt's obituary right where my hand was. The date happened to be the 2nd of October, 2008. And since 2008 was a leap year, it was a full 365 days from my aunt's death. The stack of coincidences seemed too much for me. I believe it was her trying to give me a sign of something. Hey, just wanted to make sure you got my message. I'm dead now. Using a Ouija board in an abandoned house. Me, my girlfriend and 5 other friends were using one in the attic of this place when the door fucking slams shut with no wind. We all glance around thinking one of us had locked us in. Wrong, we were all there. I tried to open the door with no luck. We had to take the door's hinges off to get out. Once we did this, we inspected the door to find there was no locking mechanism or anything blocking us in. We decided it was best if we just left. On our way out through the open back door, we all felt a strange resistance and sudden coldness when we passed through the doorway. I don't know what the frick was in that house, but I don't want to look into it further. When I worked in college, I worked at a small independent art house movie theater. Like many men in his position, the owner was a real tightwad. He was also kind of a jerk, albeit a lovable one. We always fricked with each other. A year or so before I graduated and moved away, he was diagnosed with ALS. It didn't take him long to wind up in a wheelchair, and then to bed. About 3 years later, I found out that he passed away. 2 days after that, I put on a coat I hadn't worn in a long time. When I put my hand in the pocket, I felt a piece of paper. I pulled it out and it was a paycheck from the theater for close to $200 that I somehow forgot to cash all of those years ago, with my boss's name and signature attached. I knew I could have cashed it if I made it to the bank quickly, or maybe made a claim against his estate, but I figured it would be fair to let him get the last laugh. My childhood best friend had just moved into a new house. This was in the middle of a Texas summer and he hadn't had carpet installed onto his concrete floors or account. He invites me over for a late night of Tekken on the PS1 and junk food. I agree. He ends up crashing out earlier than I do while I go on for an hour or so longer. I end up making a bed among his boxes from the move and closer to the open window as the breeze felt best there. At some point in the night I feel a strong urge to open my eyes and stand up, but for some reason I can't feel my legs or speak. I look down at my body and realize my legs are bent at a 90-degree angle and facing the window. I felt a rush of panic come over me as my body was being dragged toward the open window and I was physically unable to stop it. I end up gasping and thrashing my body frantically to the point of this force or whatever giving up its grip on me and letting me collect myself. I immediately shoot up and look over to where my buddy was sleeping, thinking he was playing a joke on me as the room was pitch black. Nope. Fast asleep. Nothing to indicate he had pulled a fast one on me as this whole sequence of events lasted several seconds. It felt like several minutes. I wake him up. Everything's still pitch black. To his annoyance and tell him what just happened. He sits up and says to me to relax while he goes over to flip the light switch. The next part freaked us out bad enough to make us sleep in the same bed for the rest of the night. The emphasis of my fright caused me to pee myself immediately upon the sight. All of those boxes from the move, the ones that were scattered about and I found myself sleeping among, they were moved into 2 rows, 4 or 5 boxes to a row and separated to clear a pathway toward the window. We told his mother about it the next day. She immediately got a priest to bless and pray over the house. My parents forbid me to go over for the rest of the summer until he confirmed that no weird crap had happened over the course of a couple of weeks. This is a religious weird one and it's long, but TLDR, guardian angel or imaginary friend saved my life. Back in college I was poor as heck, so I often drove people to the airport during school breaks at $20 per way. Most of this journey is via highway in MACT, Bradley Airport, and is fairly well lit. Anyway, one day as I'm driving, when I glance in my rearview mirror I see a man standing in the middle of the road. I glance back to the front of the car to make sure I am not about to rear-end anyone, and mumbling to myself, what an idiot, since I'm thinking whoever is fool enough to stand in the middle of the road will likely get run over. When I glance back again, no one is there, but I'm traveling semi-fast, and who knows, maybe he was running across the road, etc. 2 weeks later, I'm driving to the grocery store and I glance in the rearview mirror and see this same man standing in the road again. It's broad daylight, and though it's just a glance I gather he's tall and wearing white, or at least I get that impression. I see him again a few days later, this time at night. At this point the movie from Tales of the Crypt with the weird roadworker thanks for the ride lady fills my brain and I start freaking out that a zombie dead man is following me around town. And one day I may look in the mirror and he'll be in the back seat with his face rotting off, etc. So I start checking my rearview mirror, often, all the time, psychotically, because I develop a fear of the man following me around. Now, I'm a pretty safe driver, so whenever I check to see if he's there, I'm sure to look ahead for traffic, brake, then look in the mirror. I am sufficiently scared about it to mention it to my mother, who points out that it might be a homeless man, or something. Anyway, a few weeks later is end of Christmas break and so I'm driving tons of folks to the airport again. One of them is a late flight, so it's nearly midnight when I pick up the girl. As we are driving back to school, I get this irrational, overwhelming fear of seeing the man in the rearview mirror again. We're on the highway and I'm going at a pretty fast pace, so I look ahead, I tap the brakes, and then look in the rearview mirror. At this exact moment, a car slingshots past me on the right, swerves across my lane, hits the median, and then rolls several times at 80 miles per hour. I slam on my brakes and pull over, and the girl calls the police. The driver, really intoxicated, would have struck my car and hit us into the median if I hadn't hit my brakes at that exact moment. Checking for the weird man who stood in the road. Never saw my guardian angel again, still unsure if I imagined it all or what. I once was attending an 80s themed party. Planning to dress as Marty McFly, I spent a day shopping in thrift shops in a large city. After visiting at least 6, I had everything but a denim jacket. Not a single one had one. Crazy, I know. My friends and we decided to try one more before we gave up for the day. We walk in, the cashier meets us at the door and all she says, not hello, nothing, is we're having a sale on denim jackets today only, and showed us to 2 full racks of nothing but denim jackets in every size. I lost touch with my best friend after high school. She was a troubled soul and I thought about her often. Looked her up all the time and just could not track her down. Had a dream that I went to visit her and she had a daughter, which I figured was unlikely because she was a lesbian. Fast forward to this past year. She found me on Facebook. I check out her profile before we really have a chance to chat, reconnect, and she has a daughter that looks exactly like my dream. Also, my dream was right around her daughter's birthday. Obvs, lesbians can have kids. I figured she wouldn't ever have a kid. Also, the kid was exactly reminiscent. Not an exact copy, just extremely similar and familiar. No way I could have ever seen her previous. There were around 6 years separating the events, and turns out she was living in another state completely. This is something that happened when I was a small child. We went to Los Angeles from New Mexico for a funeral for a distant relative. We stopped and ate at a McDonald's one day, and I played in the play area as 4-year-old with some other kid. My parents talked to the other kid's parents while we played, and we went on our way. A week later we're back in New Mexico and eating at McDonald's. I start playing with this kid who looks familiar to my parents. They then see the same parents from California. Not necessarily the creepiest thing I've encountered, but this just happened a few hours ago. Just returned from dog sitting at a friend's house. It was the first time I'd done so since my cat passed away a month ago. Little things like seeing a can of cat food had me missing him. Since he'd always loved coming along to this friend's house, I kept a spare can there. Well, as I passed by the place in my app where his ashes are currently kept, I muttered, "Never thought I'd miss peeing alone." Went to the bathroom and shut the door behind me. Midstream, the door opens. I looked down, expecting to see my dog. He was asleep on the living room floor. I've shut that door a million times before, and know the nudge that he or the cat would pull when I was in the bathroom. It had opened just wide enough to let a cat in, but no cat. Maybe it's simply the whole pet grief thing. I just found it very odd, particularly as I don't believe in an afterlife of any sort. Had a nightmare a few years back that went like this. I was driving down a long stretch of empty highway and felt very unnerved. It was raining, and a man came walking into the middle of the road from the line of trees by the highway. I slowed the car, though I felt frightened to do so, and when I came close, I saw that it was a friend of mine from college. He looked devastated, and his skin was very pale. I rolled down my window to ask what had happened, and when I did, he reached out suddenly and grabbed me, at which point I woke up. Found out the very next day that he had died in the night after driving drunk and crashing his car into the trees by a highway. Never spoke a word about it to anyone, feeling that people would take too much from it, or think I was trying to gain some attention from his death. I think that I had the dream because I've always known him to be reckless, and that the timing of the dream was simply coincidence. It weirds me out nonetheless. I know Reddit's not gonna like this, but when I was 17, 4 years ago, my friends were playing around with a Ouija board. When I came in the room, they were talking to an 18-year-old World War II vet named Waldo Richards. They asked if he had any messages for anyone in the room. He said yes and spelled out my full name. They asked what the message was. He said, and this is a direct quote, "I am your guardian angel and you will go to heaven." Then he left. Believe this or don't, I don't give a crap. But suffice to say, that night will haunt me for the rest of my life. My grandmother had schizophrenia and severe paranoia. One of her major fears was that she was being watched, specifically people filming her. This is a common symptom, so we didn't think it was that strange. One day, we were visiting a large city far from our home, and there was a man with one of those old handheld camera thingy-mashi just pointed at us. This was making my grandmother quite upset. So my dad went up to ask the guy if he could put the camera away, but the guy took off running. About 10 or so feet into his run, he smashed into another guy and dropped his camera. He kept on running, and after a bit, I think he realized he didn't have the camera, cause he looked back, had this big face of fear and anger, shook his head, and kept on running. Dad picked up the camera and on it was about 3-4 hours of us walking around the city. Only us walking around the city. We never saw the guy again. A few years later my grandmother died. This isn't the first strange thing that's happened to my family though. I used to play the flute in elementary school. I put these tie-dye hippie stickers on the case so I could tell it apart from everyone else's and scribbled my name under the velvet liner. I grew bored of it a few years later and let my parents sell it to a family friend. Fast forward 10 years and I'm over at my boyfriend's parents' house one day. I'm sitting on the couch and his little sister comes in from school and plops down next to me and shows me her new instrument. Lo and behold, it's my old flute. It still has the stickers, so I pull back the liner and there is my name. Apparently they had bought it off someone that lived fairly close to my parents. Well, 5 years, a marriage and a beautiful baby girl later, we still get to play on it sometimes. These all creeped me the frick out. Seriously, it's 4 in the morning and I'm terrified to turn off the lights. I'll give my story, though it's tame compared to these, fake or not. So my little sister and I are home alone with my older sister and her best friend. My older sister and her friend are in my sister's room, which is right next to the family room in the basement. My little sister and I were playing in the family room when we hear our front door open and my mom come in and say, "Hi bud," my nickname, or something to that effect. Being the mama's boy that I am, me and my little sister bounded up the stairs to greet her, but no one is there. The front door is still locked. My mom is nowhere on the first or second floor. We run downstairs and ask my older sister if she heard her and she said she did. Her best friend didn't. We left the house immediately to walk the dog and cool down a bit. My first substantial Reddit comment. On 5-6 different occasions spanning across a month, a tiny green grasshopper was perched somewhere on my car. It was always the same size, tiny, and would either stay on the car until I got to work, or disappear from sight, only to be found on another day. I realized the possibility of these grasshoppers being the same is slim to none, but there came one day when this grasshopper, I'll call him Jim, showed up inside my car. I was parked, getting my gas pumped, and I noticed him on my dash. Not wanting him to get squashed by accident and such, I figured I'd set him outside. I grabbed an index card and watched as he jumped out my window to the concrete outside. I sat thinking of all the times he showed up while waiting for the gas attendant to come collect my money. He did. At the very moment I realized Jim had jumped to the area the attendant was to stand. I paid, and as the attendant left, I opened my car door to confirm my suspicions. He was squashed like an insect. I never saw a baby grasshopper like that again in the 2 years I continued to live in that house. What's it mean? Nothing. But I will probably never learn Kung Fu now. TLDR. I killed a Disney. I used to work evenings, from 8 PM to 4 AM at a hotel. When I was in my early 20s, I was still living out at my folks' farm, a 20 minutes drive from town. I worked the shift for a couple years. One night driving home after a particularly hard shift, I drove into a white blob of light. It was so bright it washed out all of the details. I couldn't see the ditch or the lines on the road 2 feet in front of me. I slowed down and pulled over the best I could. It was dead silent. Not a sound. Not a breeze. Nothing. It was disturbingly still. I got out of the car and walked around a bit, but I was scared to loose the car. After just a couple of feet the car was being washed out by the light. I hollered, but there wasn't an echo or anything. After a few moments of this nothingness, the light was sucked into a single point. There was a large disc just floating there, surrounded by lights. It tilted up and then took off like a shot. No noise. No wind. Nothing. It moved faster than anything I have ever seen, and disappeared on the horizon. There was sound again, a breeze. The world was back to normal. I looked around and there was another car 100 feet farther up the road. A couple was standing outside the car looking out to the horizon where the disc disappeared, just like I was. We nodded at each other, got into our cars and left. We didn't say a word to each other. I got home and looked at the clock. I never wear a watch and my old beater of a car didn't have a clock, and it was 6:30 AM. I was usually home by 4:30 AM. No clue where those 2 hours went. I would have sworn it was no more than a couple of minutes. I have never told anyone about it, and I don't think I will ever tell anyone I know about it. I would think a person was crazy for such a story, and so I will just keep living with it. Just dump it out from an anonymous account because it has been weighing on me for years. I was in my house all alone. I was about 10 or 11 at the time. I walked into my room, looking for some socks in a hurry, so I could run outside and meet my friends. My room is about 6x6, with the entrance on the north side and the closet on the east wall. So I stepped in, quickly, looking for some socks. I didn't bother to turn on the lights because I was in a hurry, but I couldn't find the socks. It was too dark. I looked at the light switch. It was off and the closet was dark. I muttered to myself, I wish someone would turn the lights on. I looked down back into the closet and I hear a click. The distinct click that you get when you flip a light switch up. The lights came back on all of a sudden. I jumped. I looked around, ran out in the hallway, no one there. I looked down on the first floor. No one there. Nobody had pulled in or out of the driveway. I just took my socks and left. Never did figure out what happened. But no explanation as to faulty wiring would explain the click or that the switch flipped up. Another weird moment was when I worked in the Walmart cash office, where the lost and found items were kept. I received a phone call and it was a girl asking if we had found her checkbook. I asked her name so I could search for it and she answered with my name. Same first and last name. Confused, I looked in the other room of the office to see if someone was playing a joke on me. Nope. I told the girl on the phone I knew we didn't have that checkbook because that was my name and she replied, oh, so you're the other one. Apparently they always confuse us at Blockbuster and she had to specify her middle name. A couple weeks later someone called my home phone and told me they had found my checkbook. There's a huge cemetery in a neighboring city that I love to go visit prior to having kids. The Black Dahlia, among many others, is buried there. A few years ago, when my son was 3 and my daughter was 1, out of randomness one morning I decided we would go to that cemetery to walk around for a bit and have a picnic lunch. I told my husband about my plan, packed up lunch, the mom bag, kids and headed out the door. On the way to the cemetery, my son asked me where we were going and I told him we were going to go on a walk through a park and have a picnic lunch. I did not tell him we were going to a cemetery or that people that have passed away are buried there. We get there and drive past all the administrative buildings and main gigantic water fountain. Then we head up towards the top. But before getting there I take a turn to head past some of the oldest graves, and as we round a bend my son says to me, "Mommy, do you see all the people, the hairs on my neck stand?" As I ask my 3-year-old son, "What people?" And mind you, there isn't a single living person outside of my car in sight. And my son replies, "All the people on the hill waving at me." I looked around, couldn't see a single person and hadn't seen one since we entered the grounds. I told my son, "Nobody, I can't see the people, but just because mommy cannot see them doesn't mean they might not be there. Let's go have lunch somewhere else, so we don't bother them," and basically I noped the frick out of there. Now, I have no idea what my son may have been seeing, but just like I said to him, just because I cannot see it, doesn't mean it isn't there. If he could actually see people waving at him, that I couldn't see, I haven't the faintest if they were beckoning, waving at him with friendly or malicious intent. So yeah, frick that. And now I am thoroughly creeped out. My best friend was on a father-son fishing trip at Sioux Narrows, Ontario. I'm from North Dakota and so were my friends and his family. Now there is this bridge there that's apparently 50-60 feet above the water. My friend was with another mutual friend who had went on the trip. These two had a tradition of jumping off this bridge into the water. On this particular trip, my friend's dad had a crazy dream where one of them jumped off and died. It shook him to the point he made all the people on the trip promise they wouldn't jump. My two friends ignored the warning and went for it anyway. As you have already figured out, my friend never came out of the water. One of the best people I've ever met gone. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.